Start today. It's all in your hands. For heaven, if you want change in your life, you have to change. There's no other way around it. This is the Just Real Quick podcast, where we discuss how to succeed in the world of sales through confidence, discipline, and consistency. Are you ready to be intentional about creating more opportunities that lead to sales? Tune into this episode right now for the latest insights and strategies that will take your sales game to the next level. I'm your host, Jefferson K. Rogers. Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of Just Real Quick. Me and J-Rod in the studio today. We're going to be covering some stuff on leadership, specifically both in your life outside of work, but specifically inside of JKR Windows as it pertains to directorship and coordinators, recruiting, all kinds of great stuff we're going to cover today. Jared, let's get started, huh?
Let's get it. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about this because obviously leadership is a huge aspect of really any business. They can only go as far as their leaders.
Sure is.
And with us having as big as goals as we have, it's important that we not only develop, but also attract some really good leaders. Mm-hmm. So some things that I wanted to talk about as far as just kind of getting into leadership. Say you're new to JKR Windows and you just want to start doing something to get into leadership. Something that really helped me when I started with JKR Windows was getting some personal recruits, because you bring them in, it allows you get the opportunity to provide some mentorship for them. And depending on your position, so when I had my recruits come in, it was at the beginning of my directorship. So then they started setting appointments for me. So basically I had created my own little team to lead, just by recruiting.
And you know what? What I've noticed though is that not everybody does that. Like some people will recruit and they're having success and they love it here. We got a great culture to be a part of. They love showing up and they'll recruit people. But then, you know, what we need to do a better job of is explaining to people the opportunity that creates for them.
Yeah.
To like latch on and help them and develop them and share the experiences that you've had throughout the process. And you just intuitively did that from the beginning.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't remember ever talking to you about that. It was just kind of on your mind that this was an opportunity that you wanted people to be a part of.
Every job I've ever had, I've always tried to recruit my buddies.
Yeah.
It's just, hey bro, what do you got going on? Why don't you come work with me? You know, it's been like a natural thing.
Yeah, I love that. So there is a difference. You can recruit and just choose not to help them and just let the JKR system help them and develop, and let's move them along in the process, help them see success. But what a great opportunity to be able to bring somebody in that you know and have a relationship with and you care about them succeeding, and then to be intentional about the time that you put in helping them develop and work on their script and work on their mindset and work on all the things that are going to help them see success, you know, on top of everything that we're all going to be doing to help them anyways.
Absolutely.
But each one of those interactions, no matter if it's somebody you recruited or somebody on the team that you feel like is struggling, every time that you can help somebody and have one of those reps talking through something that you've been through or from your perspective, it's leveling you up as a leader. It's such a great opportunity.
Yeah. And it can really turn into, say for me, for example, it turned me into like lower level leadership of a small team. But then that transitioned into being a sales office leader. And then that kind of segued into being a regional director, you know? So that was all, there's more than that. Obviously that was part of my path, but that was a huge part of it. And to get my foot in the door and really, like I mentioned, like I was in leadership pretty much from the get-go because I had recruited people that I could lead. And it all kind of formed that path for me to get to what my goal was at that point, which was regional director. So it was really awesome. Now, another thing I want to cover is, now this is for our leaders that are a little bit more advanced, say maybe you're running an office type of leadership, is productivity. So you hold a lot of weight with your words, or even just a director in general. You can have all the good information, all the little nuggets and bits of advice and stuff, but if you don't have a lot of production behind it, the words just don't have a lot of weight. Now, you get a guy that is closing deals left and right, putting up over $300,000 a month consistently in revenue. Those words start to hold a little bit more weight. Now, also when you're, say, so you can lead in terms of revenue and stuff, that's leadership in and of itself, because you're the rabbit and people want to follow that lead, you know. But also when you're the sales, like a sales leader, in my opinion, I don't see leading from the front as being the number one guy. Potentially you could, but that's not the idea. The idea is to build up those around you to where you have like 5 to 10 number one type of guys. You want your team to be like, when we're looking at revenue, like you want at least top 3 of the top 5 from your office on there.
Yeah, I think one of the things that sticks out to me about leadership, the very first leadership book that I ever read was called The 5 Levels of Leadership. And it was very early in the process for me. I didn't know where I was at as a leader. And I'd had a couple of positions that were more like a managerial position. Mm-hmm. But as I read more into this book and learned about each level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, that the top echelon of leadership is developing other leaders.
Yep.
And it actually says in there that your reputation precedes you, which basically means that there's been so many success stories and so many other leaders that were generated that you've created a legacy of leadership in your wake.
Yep.
And this is an opportunity for people to come in here and be a part of a culture and an environment where there's a ton of opportunities to help people level up, from everybody from the very beginning levels, never done sales before, to at each level, there's an opportunity to coach and develop and mentor somebody that may be at your level, struggling with some mental or some tactical stuff, or people way below you.
Yeah.
And you're missing opportunities left and right if you're not taking advantage of that with everybody around you. Because we've got people that don't, and they're successful here, and they kind of keep to themselves, and they do well. They make great money. But over and over and over, those people especially, the more knowledge that they gain, the more reps that they have, the more success that they have, the more they have to contribute. And it's just a big opportunity that people are missing out on to have a part of somebody's story.
Absolutely. And that's something that I know that you get that feeling from me, obviously, but I get that feeling over and over again from the guys that I've been able to help. And when I look at that top 5, top 10 list of reps, I can go through and I'm like, remember checking that director off. Or say Andres, I've been working with him for about 2 years because I just saw something in him that was special when he came in. And so I started giving him a little bit of extra attention, building a relationship with him, giving him some opportunities to step up as a leader. And it's turned into where he's one of the best leaders that we have in the company.
Yeah.
And to have
among the best closers also.
Yeah, exactly. And to have or just you name them, just to have a piece of that story of helping them get to the point that they're at or whatever point it is they want to get to in life, no matter how small of my impact was, the fact of just having an impact, the money's great in this job, but being able to help people change their lives, money's a byproduct of that.
It's incredible. That's what fires me up.
Yeah.
When I got involved in door-to-door for the first time, I was not excited. I was hanging around a bunch of people that weren't excited either.
Yep.
And I was just kind of muscling my way through it. And I was seeing them have success, and I was going to have success. I was not going to turn back. I was not going to quit. I was going to have success, even to the detriment of my own freaking mental stability. And it weighed on me for a long time. But once I started being able to tap into coaching and mentoring and helping other people, once I'd gotten enough experience that I could actually be relevant doing that, dude, that's when I started really, I didn't have the feelings anymore about, this is door knocking, it's tough, and it's the most difficult thing I've ever done, which is what I tried to convince myself for the first year that I was doing this, because everybody else was saying it.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the turning point for me of when I really started turning it up and being able to be more effective, more efficient, and fired up and convicted in those appointments.
I'm glad you brought that up because when I talk about this job, especially when my job was just to knock doors, I would say that, I don't necessarily love knocking doors, I'll be honest, but I never let it turn me off. It's like, well, I think about the relationship I have with my team. I think about obviously the money that I make. I think about the events that we do, the energy that I get from the jump starts. But the last component of that, the 5th component, is the fulfillment that I get from developing these guys. That's one thing. I'm glad you brought that up because I just realized that's one of the biggest things that make me not even worry about knocking doors is the fact that I get to have an impact on people and I don't even think about knocking doors.
Yeah, it's different. So now, we don't knock doors a ton, but when we do, I'm never out there knocking doors by myself.
Yeah, always with someone.
I'm going out there to coach and to mentor and to hear where somebody's at mentally and to hear where their pitch is at, be able to offer them some feedback and then dust off some of the old skills and get them out.
Yeah.
And every time I go out and set a couple appointments, like I'll go out for 30, 45 minutes and I'll set a couple appointments. And because I'm not consistent, I haven't gotten a ton of closes over the last couple of years, but it comes right back.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember those feelings of dreading it. And that, I'm sitting there in the neighborhood and not even wanting to get out of my car and scrolling through Instagram. But it's different once you're intentional about the impact that you're about to make and the opportunity to go spend some time with somebody who you may be able to change the entire trajectory of their life with this 1 30-minute interaction.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Yeah. Like you said, 30 minutes, you can really change the whole trajectory of what they have going on. Yeah. Whether it's mindset or just a couple little pieces of advice that you give them.
To see it. Like there's people that are here that remember those 30 minutes that I spent with them, the 30 minutes that you spent with them. You remember the 30 minutes I spent with you.
Absolutely. I'll never forget it.
Dude, it's just like we have such an opportunity to mold people's lives and to make an impact and to carve this little impression in them that can change the way that they think about things and the opportunity and whether or not they stay sometimes.
Yeah. And then having that impact on them, in turn, creating or having them have that impact on other people, that's when it really starts feeling awesome. And you can really start feeling that impact. And I know that you're starting to feel that 5 years into this. Other companies have been made based off the business model and everything. And that's an impact that you've had at this point. I mean, there's probably hundreds of people. That are in the window industry, and this thing's going to turn into, I remember we had one guy working with us before, and he was one of the early guys at Aptive.
Yeah.
And he was like, this is like getting in with Aptive when it's like in the early days. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's going to take over.
And it's an industry that is so unknown and untapped. And we're starting to see all these little pop-ups. JKR Windows started that. And we may not have actually started it because our model came from, 25 years ago from a company
like Apex or whatever.
Like Apex. Mm-hmm. But Apex is Apex. And they were making an impact. And we came from that model. But we've accelerated the impact that we've made to the replacement window industry with leadership and the opportunity and helping people see that there is something else besides what they're doing. And they can change their entire lives and their families' lives.
Yep. And just the exposure in general, especially when we go to door-to-door con and these solar companies, roofing companies, pest control, now they understand that, hey, there's a whole different game out here and it's called replacement windows. So let's get back on track here. So we got another concept that I want to cover is the law of the lid. So this is, I would say, for a little bit more advanced leaders, at least a guy that's maybe a coordinator leader, but it could be a pod director, sales director. I know it definitely affects me. I know it definitely affects you. And it's called the law of the lid. And if you read 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell, it's the very first law, the law of the lid. So what that is basically is your company, your team, whatever it is, they're only going to go as far as basically whatever ceiling that you have, the lid. Yeah. What your cap is. The cap is the lid, essentially.
Yeah, they're being led by your capabilities.
Exactly.
So if you've capped out at this invisible lid, you're going to cap out the potential of your team.
Yeah, and that's why. So say some companies, for example, they'll say, everything was good, and then it just seems like we got to a certain point and we just hit a ceiling. We couldn't break through it. Mm-hmm. And it's because the law of the lid, their leaders haven't been leveling up to the point of where they can actually handle having more revenue. Mm-hmm. And so say, for example, we've been setting records left and right, and it's really important to understand that the people that are setting these records, that are leading these people that are setting the records, they're the ones that are buying into this thing. They're taking it the most serious. I know that me, for example, for myself, my paycheck has always been a direct reflection of the amount of personal development that I'm doing. And it's a little bit different. I've geared it now more towards leadership ability for my personal development. Yeah. And it's just amazing to see the team and all the records break and everything with me being a leader for it. And I understand that we're only going to be able to break those records if I'm leveling myself up. And say if I just, hey, this is where I stop, I'm good, I got it all handled as a leader, guess what? We're not going to hit the records, or we're not going to break any more records. We're not going to hit the goals that we have as a company. For us to be able to hit what we need to hit, I need to raise my lid. You need to raise your lid. Every person in this company, we need to raise our lid in order to hit those.
100%.
And having the understanding of, hey, we're going to get to our goals, but who I am now is not the person that it's going to take to get there. So I need to keep leveling myself up.
And you know what? I heard something once about I can't remember who it was, but their perspective on goal setting. Actually, I think it was Matthew McConaughey, now that I think about it. And the way that he talked about goal setting, it was really cool. And I've kind of adopted it because I've been able to look back and see this play out in my own life. So as you make these goals, some of us have 1 week goals, 1 month goals, you know, they turn into bigger and bigger and bigger as your vision gets bigger for what's possible for you. But now, like the type of goals that we have for JKR Windows, to get to $200 million, to even do 31 million this year, it's less about the goal and more about the version of ourselves that we're going to have to become to be able to hit those goals. Like we are not going to be able to stay the same and to hit 31 million. We're on a mad rush to do as much as possible, to grow as much as possible as leaders, and to make a bigger impact and to bring more value to our teams. That's the only way that 31 million is possible. And the only way that 200 million is possible is if we show that same type of concept to 15, 20, 30 other leaders that can buy into this possibility for themselves as a leader to help get us all to $200 million. We only get there with leadership.
Yep. And something that I like to focus on as a leader, and as far as my goals as a leader, because I'm trying to go all the way to the top. At least with JKR Windows, I want to be the VP. So my whole goal right now is to create the need for a VP. And so but the concept remains. It's like, so at one point I was just managing a couple coordinators, and then I started focusing on building up other directors so then I could run the office. Yeah. You know, so I had to replace myself.
What gave you the audacity to think that big? That's what I want to know, Jared. Because everybody in here has the same fucking opportunity as you do. But you just think bigger than everybody.
You know, part of it could be a little bit more life experience and exposure. So I had a good buddy of mine who, he was like one of the first people in my life that did what he talked about. He would tell me these big goals of what he's going to do in business. And it would be like a year or two, he would tell me that he was going to do it. And then like a year or two later, it actually happened. And to see him be a part of, it was 3 organizations that I watched him be a part of, and they would build it up and sell it. And the last one, they went public for like $22 billion or something like that. And I'm not sure exactly what his cut of it was. I think it was about 5%, but yeah,
still pretty big.
Having a cut of 22 billion, pretty big deal. Yeah. And so that was one of the first exposures that I had of really thinking bigger. One of the realizations I had to think bigger was being exposed to someone that they talk the talk and they walk the walk. The first person I'd ever met in my life that talked big like that, but actually followed through with it. So that's when I really started changing the mindset, I would say, in terms of like thinking bigger and like potential for myself as well. Yeah. And then, that exposure when you had reached out to me, you were very much on a similar path as what my buddy was. And so, it was, you had brought me in, and I was kind of getting an idea of, because back then we were like, the big thing was to hit 40 million in revenue. I mean, we've far eclipsed that, we broke that record last year, but that was the big thing. Yep. So that was a big part of it is you kind of painting the picture for me. And I don't know if you recall or not, but you were talking about opportunities in the future for this to be like a 7-figure a year income. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, that's what I want. So
absolutely.
And something that this is a natural aspect of me that I'm very thankful to have. For whatever reason, any job I've ever had, I've always kind of fast tracked to the top, just because I look at it as I might as well maximize what it is I'm doing while I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm not there just to punch the clock and, work mindlessly and then clock out. Let me get as much as I can. Let me develop skill sets. There's like 5 different trades that I know probably better than Windows. And I know Windows pretty good. Just to get all the skill sets that I can from it, leadership, whatever it is, as much as I can get from that opportunity to take it into my next opportunity and apply it. And I'm also, if I'm going to be there, I might as well max my time, maximize my skill sets, maximize my income, and also understanding the big picture too, because I could look as far as my nose and say, you know what? Let me just go out there and self-gen. Let me go out there and self-gen. I could self-gen all day, every day. I could have an amazing income doing it. Amazing income. But I think it'd be pretty hard to hit 7 figures off of self-gens alone. You know?
I mean, we've seen it done. It can happen. Like you can make 7 figures in door-to-door sales. But what kind of impact are you making?
Yeah. What kind of impact am I making? And also, I'm not making an impact. And by stepping back and seeing the big picture and being willing to make less right now to make more later and do it the right way by building up leaders, making an impact, and not just being so focused on myself and my selfishness. It's really just what can I add to the team? And it's all going to come back to me. It's going to come back to me big.
So how does that translate to the rest of the team and all of our future leaders of JKR Windows? Because, not everybody sees it as naturally as you do and has this intuition to just come in and maximize their value that they're offering to every scenario.
The very base level belief. That's the very base level. I believed you, Jeff. How the road for us to get to this point right now, for me to be a regional director in the role that I'm in, it's not how I don't think the path has gone how I would have thought it would have gone. But at the base level, I had the belief that I was going to make it happen, and it happened. I did everything I could in my, within my control to make it happen. But at the base level is just my belief that it was going to happen, and being just kind of, how do I make it happen? Just solution-based, solving problems to get to that point.
Yeah.
So base level, it's kind of hard to tell people like, hey, be proactive, do this, do that. But my base level was just the fact that I believed in it so much, it didn't matter how we've gotten to this point.
Yeah.
My belief led me here regardless.
It was a combination of belief, confidence.
Confidence is huge.
Action, like massive action. I mean, not that you've ever slowed down, but to be able to earn the opportunity for this, you were at the right place at the right time with the consistent amount of action and contribution to the company, where it was just, you took it out of, like you took things into your own hands and you took all of the barriers out of the way. And everybody here has the same opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
To go out there and contribute and mentor and coach and produce at a high level and prove yourself and continue to show up with a good attitude, make an impact, and believe that there's something possible for you here that, you could take that same kind of mentality anywhere. But what a great opportunity here at JKR Windows we have on the path, the trajectory, the goals that we have, the impact that we've already made on so many other people's lives. There is unbelievable things that are going to happen over the next 5 years. And there's people here today that I know are going to be there with us in 5 years when we're getting ready to have an exit or, whatever. Who knows what it's even going to look like? You just said it. It's like, we don't have any idea what it's going to look like. But we are working in that direction.
Yep.
And we know that the writing's on the wall. Like we've got the team, we've got the trajectory, we got the vision for this thing, the impact that we're making, the change in this market that we've created. 5 years from now, I mean, who knows what it's going to look like? But there's people here in the company right now and that will continue to come in that have an opportunity to make an impact and to change their own lives, change many other people's lives, and to make a 7-figure income and to have a piece of the exit. When we exit this thing for X number of hundreds of millions of dollars, you can be dang sure that everybody is going to get a piece of it that contributed.
And, something that as you were talking, it kind of reminded me of a situation over the weekend. I had Mr. Ty Ross give me a call.
Yeah.
He had some cancellations, some things, and he was kind of having to deal with some mindset stuff. Mm-hmm. And So we talked about this, we talked about that. And I feel one of the most impactful things that I was able to get across to him is in the short amount of time that he's been here, obviously he's had good success. He's closed a bunch of deals, but also he's providing a lot of leadership for his team, just natural leadership. We all got work to do. Kids got some work to do, but just a natural leadership that he's providing for his team. And he's always trying to add value for his team. Yeah. He's doing just these extra little things that a lot of people aren't doing. And I told him, I was like, Ty, maybe this week, this month, the paycheck's not great. Keep doing what you're doing, man. The impact that you're making, the leadership that you're providing, this thing's going to work out, and it's going to work out really well for you. I've seen it over and over again. And when people are doing what you're doing, trust me, buddy, you're going to look back on this week or this month or whatever and laugh at it because you're going to have so much success in the future. Mm-hmm. So the reason why I wanted to say that is because when we're not so focused on ourselves, what's right in front of my face, oh, I got a cancellation, I got a deal. He's focused on the big picture. How do I impact my team? How do I have an impact or an influence or whatever it is? That stuff, it compounds. It compounds and it compounds. And like I said, it may not be a check in your bank account this week, but a year from now, you keep up that shit, building all this value, all this credibility, you're going to position yourself, however it works, you're going to position yourself to make a lot of money. I know because I've done it. And I try to do things the right way. I try to do it in a way to where I'm not being selfish. There's a lot of situations where it's easy to be biased towards yourself or maybe biased towards certain things. But it's really important as a leader, guys, take yourself out of the equation and focus on what's best for your team, first and foremost. When you put yourself aside and your team first, everything fucking works out. When you put yourself first, it's this bottleneck of leadership, bottleneck of productivity. It's like, you can't go past me, guys. I want these guys to be able to flourish and go, if there's a better region or better regional, better VP, come on, bring it up. You know what I'm saying?
And we want that.
Yeah.
We encourage it. We've got a couple of guys in here that think very highly of themselves and are confident and they believe that the big things are possible for them. And we encourage them.
Yeah.
I've heard a couple of guys say they want to be the VP too. And let's go. Let's go. You got some big shoes to fill.
Got some big shoes to fill. And you know what? If that's what you want to do, I'll give you everything I got as far as leadership. I'll help you out as much as I can. Because what that's going to do, by helping you level up your leadership, guess what? I just leveled mine up in turn.
Yep. And there's a saying, help enough people get what they want and you'll have everything that you ever wanted.
Yep. I think that's something I know that at least John C. Maxwell talks about.
Uh-huh.
Yep. For sure.
I mean, maybe one of the biggest personalities in leadership, John C. Maxwell. If you haven't read one of his books, that was the first book that I read, was The 5 Levels of Leadership. Changed my life. It gave me a new perspective and it put things into perspective for me. Holy shit, I'm way down here on the totem pole. I thought of myself really highly and I had all these skills and was confident in myself, but I was a level 1 leader. And I wanted to get to level 2, level 3, level 4. And, level 5 is only possible as you build a legacy of leaders. But we're in the process of doing that.
Yep. Okay, guys. So what do we got here? Now, another concept I want to cover is the difference between being a manager and being a leader. Because in a well-established company that's been around for 100 years and they got all their systems and processes all dialed in and they just need people to manage it, I get it. Mm-hmm. But something like this where, like you said, we're building this thing as fast as we can. I mean, we're going all out right now and we don't need managers aren't going to help us get there at all. Yeah. Leaders are going to help us get there.
Which there's a time and a place. We all have a little bit of these management skills to keep people on task and to make sure that we're hitting our metrics, things like that. But realistically, what we need everybody to be focused on, as important as these management skills are, is the inspiration that comes from leadership. Because when you're sitting in front of a group just talking about numbers, being on time, boom, 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 just by the book.
It's not very inspiring.
It's not very inspiring. It'll, get the job done to a certain point. But what we really need to focus on for everybody is books like this, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership and How to Win Friends and Influence People. There's dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of books that are written about leadership. And everybody who wants to make a contribution as a leader should be doing something to level up as a leader on top of the interactions, the reps with the people that need it, that are at or below your level, that you can help make an impact on their life. That's great. But then you've got to go out and surround yourself with incredible leaders and learn from the best leaders in the world that sometimes aren't even alive anymore.
Yeah.
But we got an opportunity to absorb information through podcasts and books and Audible from the best in the world. And if you're not doing it, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're obviously not that serious about leadership.
Yep. And, you're not that serious about the impact you're having on your team and the success of them. Because if you can't lead them to success, you're not going to manage people to success. You lead them to success.
You lead and inspire.
Yep.
That's how we go to the next level, is inspiring leaders. And we got some great leaders in this company, and it's our job to help them continue to level up and develop more leadership, which in turn, helps us level up as leaders too.
As well. Before we get into the books, is there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, I think that's it. Yeah,
Okay.
We pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover as well. And with these books, I highly suggest that everybody take advantage of this book list. Put a wish list together, download them on Audible. I'm an Audible and a hardback guy, so I have hundreds and hundreds of books that are hardback. I'll download the Audible and then I'll buy the book if I don't already have it, because I want to absorb it in a lot of different ways. If I like that book, like Outwitting the Devil, I've read it 3 times and I've listened to it 3 times. One of my favorite books of all time.
Yeah. And listening to it's a little bit different than reading it.
Yeah. And I suggest that if you're not much of a reader, then do Audible. But don't just give up on reading. I wasn't always a reader either. It took me forever to read a book. I was so slow, so in ADD, and my mind would wander, and I would just read 2 pages and don't remember anything that was on those 2 pages. But after a lot of intentionality and a lot of years practicing, I now consider myself a reader and a damn good reader. I'm still kind of slow, but now I'm like in it and I understand it. And I've got like the comprehension that I was always hoping that I could get.
So much so that you remember the name of the author, everything. You bring up a book, you're like, oh yeah, and the author's this and that. And so it's awesome to see that progression. Yeah. But it's the same thing. It's just like working out, right? It's a muscle. Maybe you're not well-versed in it. You don't quite know where to start. But the fact of the matter is the important thing is starting. And this is a great starting place, is this book list. So the first one that we want to cover is, this is the number 1 book. If anybody ever asks me what my number 1 book recommendation is, it's always How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Now, what do you say if somebody's already read it?
Read it again.
Read it again.
And that, I'm glad you said that, because as you were kind of talking about this reading list, guys, don't just read these books once. Read them multiple times. I was reading How to Win Friends and Influence People once a quarter, just on Audible. I was listening to it. But now that I've learned a lot from it, and every time I learn from it, or every time I read it, I either learn a little bit or it just reminds me of certain concepts. It's like a maintenance. And that's what I read it for. It's a maintenance, really.
It is. And another cool thing about it, every time I've read Outwitting the Devil, or I've read How to Win Friends and Influence People probably 7 or 8 times. It's also my favorite book of all time.
Yeah.
Made as big of an impact as any other book on my life ever. But every time that you read it, you're at a different place in your life and in your development and as a communicator and a leader. So every single time something is going to stick out differently.
The concepts hit just a little bit different.
You perceive it a little bit differently.
Yep.
Or it is a reminder of like something that you had picked up before and you said that you needed to work on it, but it wasn't the right time. Like it didn't stick. So all of these books, the most impactful books that you feel that same type of connection that we have, pick it back up.
Yep.
Listen to it on Audible. Get your highlighter out next time and make notes in the margins.
Yeah, and I like to, like you do, I always like to, for one, I always have a paperback I'm reading, and then I always have an Audible that I'm listening to. So there's 2 books that I'm always consuming at once, but then I like to consume them in both ways. I like to read the paperback, and then I like the Audible as well, which kind of is, it's a good segue to the next book is 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. We've already mentioned it. And I was talking to you earlier that I've been listening to it on Audible. Yeah. And the way that he breaks everything down in between the chapters, it's like long form conversation, kind of like a podcast, if you will. And what's really cool about it is he originally wrote the book in the 90s. And so he has just new information, like more experience.
He's one of those guys that's never stopped growing.
Yeah.
Never stopped leveling up. So I can imagine that his perspective, even on his own books, changes. I just got finished with a book, and if I wasn't like so crunched for time and wanting to get this thing out, I could go back and rewrite the whole thing. Because I'm in a completely different place than I was 2 years ago when I started it. He's the same way. And I love that. So I need to listen to that too, because it's very interesting how things change over time, your perspective, even on your own concepts.
Yeah, I would highly recommend it. And he even broke down because this is like kind of the third stage of it. The first stage is when he wrote it. About 10 years later, he made some revisions and kind of revised it a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then the latest Audible version. And I mean, it's so new. He's talking about COVID and a bunch of stuff. Like it's within the last year, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would highly, highly recommend that. Read it, but also listen to the Audible. Tons of just context behind stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's really awesome.
And while we're talking about John C. Maxwell, he's got hundreds of books.
Yeah, he's the most published author in history for books on leadership.
One that really impacted my life, the first leadership book I ever read was The 5 Levels of Leadership. So that's another one that's really, it's an easy read, and it's pretty quick. And for me, it made a huge impact. So I also suggest looking into The 5 Levels of Leadership.
Sweet. And what's really cool, another thing about just the Audible on that is so he's not a young man. This guy's in his 70s. And his voice, you could tell it's an old man's voice, but the energy behind it, you can tell it's a guy that takes his personal development seriously and has never let it go, because there's no way you could be that old and have that sort of energy behind your voice. Amazing.
Yeah, he's a leader in the space of leadership.
Yeah.
And he talks about all the things, and he doesn't just talk about it. He lives up to it.
Yeah, and you can tell. Okay, so another book, guys. This is one that I've read it multiple times, paperback. I've listened to it.
It's great Audible too, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great Audible, especially because, just the seriousness. Now, this is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink.
Yep.
And then I believe it's Leif Babin.
Yep.
And he's the co-author. Together. Yeah, co-author. And with the Audible guys, you have both of them. So it kind of goes...
Leif or Leif?
Leif. I think it's Leif. So the Audible, it kind of goes back and forth. One will read a chapter, the other one will read a chapter. But I mean, these guys lived it. These are Navy SEALs, combat veterans, talking about the lessons they learned in leadership, going through these battles, and just the seriousness of someone's voice that actually lived that. I mean, it just hits completely different. I know, I listen to a lot of Joe Rogan podcasts, and whenever he has a guy come on his podcast, promoting their book, he always asks them, were you the one who read it? He's like, oh man, you got to read it. You got to be the one to read it, because you're the one who wrote it. Nobody's going to embody what the message is like the person who wrote it. So that's what's really cool about that book, is because those guys actually lived that, and to hear the seriousness of their voice in it, it was impactful for me, for sure.
You know what? I've always been curious about that too, because when you have such a strong message, like say, Can't Hurt Me, for example, David Goggins may not be the best reader, but he's the best at telling his story. And the fact that he had whatever pipsqueak voice read that thing off was so confusing to me.
But he at least had some conversation after each chapter, right?
Yeah. So they did kind of a podcast style. Yeah. The dude read it, and then they would break at each major point and do a little podcast.
Yeah. But could you imagine if that was all?
It should have been him.
David?
Should have been him.
Yeah.
Can you just the intensity in his voice and his the stories coming out of his own mouth, it changed the whole experience. So when I first listened to Can't Hurt Me, it was a great book. I liked it a lot better when I read it.
Yeah.
Because I was reading it in David Goggins' motherfucking voice, rah.
Yep.
And then I hear the pipsqueak voice that was reading it on Audible. I was like, no.
Yeah, you want to read that in the get up motherfucker voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so there's tons of books on leadership, guys, but these are the three, How to Win Friends and Influence People and Extreme Ownership. I've gone through those probably more than most other books.
Pick them up, read them. How much does it cost to get a book on Audible?
I don't know. I pay the monthly fees,
like $15 a month.
And then you get credits.
And you get a credit where normally it would be, the idea is that it's less expensive than if you were to buy one individually.
Yeah.
For most books. If you were to go buy Extreme Ownership, it's probably $18.
Yep.
But if you have a membership, it's $14 a month, and it's a tax deductible expense for your business as a 1099. Just write that shit off.
Yeah.
$15 a month could change your fucking life. If you're listening to books like Extreme Ownership, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, 5 Levels of Leadership, and How to Win Friends and Influence People. So don't wait another day. If you got to go to the DI, if you got to go to Barnes & Noble, download the app on Audible, start today. Pick up a book. We all talk about these things enough. You've gotten a recommendation. You probably even have it in your notes. If you haven't started, start today. It's all in your hands. For heaven, if you want change in your life, you have to change. There's no other way around it. And I can speak from experience because I spun my wheels and I repeated the same destructive freaking bullshit behaviors in my life for years and years and years. And until I took ownership for it and I got over all the freaking bullshit habits that I had and started just replacing them with better habits, getting up early, writing my goals, reading some books, surrounding myself with great people. I had to take it into my own hands for it to ever happen. Don't be one of those people that's just waiting for something magnificent to happen to you and you're waiting for the freaking lottery to hit or waiting for your son to get rich or your dad to get rich. I hear this all the time. It's so irritating. Nobody is going to fucking come to rescue you. You have to come to rescue you. So level up. Take responsibility for it. Pick up a book. Be determined to become the leader that you were supposed to be.
Fucking A.
Let's go.
Let's go.
All right. That was solid. Thank you for checking in. Until next time, me and Jared are out of here.